Hey everybody, this is a video following up on my Veilguard video. I'm going to be reading and replying to some points made on some comments that relate to the matter and that I had to leave out of the original recording, which was around 45 minutes long. Sorry in advance if I end up missing some comments that I intended on replying back when the video released. A lot of time has passed and I got busy making a bunch of other videos, while in the meantime so many more new comments were made. So I'm going to get to a few of them while also not stretching this video way too much. Thank you all so much for commenting and for all the love and insightful comments on this video and other videos recently. I really appreciate it. I'm also going to go over some negative comments and responding to whatever arguments or hate that they may have, so let's get in there. We're gonna start with a big one. It's going to be this peachy comment right here, calling me a grifter, saying that I'm doing confirmation bias and ignoring games and shows where inclusion supposedly succeeds, even though in several videos of mine I have featured this image right here as just a surface example of how good games with inclusion or good examples of diversity exist. Hell, it might actually even be in the Veilguard video itself. I haven't rewatched it in preparation for this, so I cannot be certain, but it is in other videos and I don't avoid these examples at all. In fact, I lean into them because every single video game, every single movie, every single show, every single piece of media, no matter what it is, that is successful and features characters that are not white, male or straight is a big piece of evidence of the fact that there is indeed a problem going on right now. It completely destroys the argument made by some people that this wave of, let's say, anti-woke criticism is nothing but hatred, bigotry and misogyny and a bunch of other phobias and other nonsense that they parrot anytime that they can. Because it shows that it has never been about that. It has never been about the inclusion of non-white characters, it's never been about the inclusion of female characters in lead positions, it's never been about the inclusion of gay or bi relationships. It has always been about how they are implemented, how they are written and woven into the game or the media, whatever it is, the intentions behind the developers or executives or directors or actors that are actually behind these projects, producing them. Of course, I'm not denying the existence of actual racist, sexist, and phobic people. Of course, these people exist, they've always existed, and they forever will. But that doesn't change the fact that this has nothing to do with that. It only enforces it. Backlash against DEI injections and political propaganda into media is far bigger and more tangible than ever before. This is because the actual number of unhinged racists, sexists, and homophobes has never mattered before. Successful movies and shows and games were still successful despite them. The reason why they are no longer successful anymore and the reason why the outcry, the backlash, or just the total mockery of this kind of stuff in our media is as big as it is now is because it is an actual problem that is hitting far more people, and the number only increases as more quote-unquote normies notice it and start asking questions or personally feel it in the form of being attacked because of having an opinion. I mean, these days, are you kidding me? It's become a meme. Don't like Rings of Power? Bigot. Don't like The Acolyte? Sexist. Don't like the look of Concord? Ambiphobe. I had to literally look this one up. I had a feeling that they would have come up with some new fucking word for it. Don't like the quote-unquote feminist reinvention of Lara Croft's sweat stains? Incel. Don't like Dragon Age Veilguard? Transphobe. Look at Dustborn and wonder what the fuck that even is? Chud. Hell, it's even in the media that we enjoy. Fan of Black Myth Wukong? Toxic. Fan of Stellar Blade? Coomer. Watch a single episode of a Joe Rogan podcast? Alt-right. Casual enjoyer of Nerdrotic or heel versus babyface? Shit-eating caveman. Hell, even this comment did it. I calmly lay down why Dragon Age Veilguard's excuse for the top surgery scars being about inclusion is a lie that has no basis in reality. I pull up receipts, I don't discriminate against the director for being trans, I make a case for why this stuff is bad for their community in an empathetic way, I lay down why I genuinely do not care if someone is gay or trans, and yet I still get called a biased, hateful grifter that engages in confirmation bias, is not interested in the dialogue, and feeds a community of gay-hating and woman-despising people. This kind of attitude and treatment, the same sort of treatment afforded to me by Xander Hall in one of his videos reacting to my video of Actman, which I will eventually get onto actually responding, is precisely why backlash and mockery is so big right now when it comes to these pieces of media. It's because normal, tolerant people are getting sick of being called vile shit by morons like this just because they disagree with the current narrative, or because they're tired of seeing their favorite franchises across TV, film and gaming getting turned into immersion-breaking, shit-quality propaganda pieces invaded by activists for developers, or consultant companies like Sweet Baby Inc. and Hit Detection that are caked with activists as well. Why was Brokeback Mountain, Last of Us and Undertale successful? Because they were pieces of entertainment. They weren't made into vehicles for propaganda by talentless activists who don't know how to fucking write a gay character, or a character of color, or who don't know how to engage their audiences in a compelling story. Contrast Brokeback Mountain with Bros, for example, a total box office failure that the director then blamed on heterosexual people. Because of course, accountability never exists with narcissistic victim mentality people. The Last of Us worked because it was a good game. At no point is the plot being held back to wallow in Ellie or Bill's sexuality. At no point are Sam and Henry used for pandering or social justice messaging. At no point is Tess or Ellie used for intersectional feminist messaging or even made to just be arrogant Mary Sues with no flaws whatsoever. This is a game that told a compelling story through a journey focused on developing the relationship between Joel and Ellie, while giving us memorable chapters along the way. Same thing with Undertale. It was an entertaining game from start to finish, a compelling little story with music, the characters, the humorous writing, the references to pop culture, the hidden secrets and missable dialogues. It was simply delightful. At no point did this game try to inject fucking political propaganda. I could care less if the character is not given a gender. You are the one who is hyper-focused on this, not the rest of the planet. You also have to take into account the release date of these games. They came out during a time where there wasn't such a thing as this vice grip of politics in the industry. We are now at a point where DEI consulting companies exist with self-proclaimed activists who hate gamers, who want to take over the medium or burn it to the ground. This is their words, not mine. You simply can't shove a game from 2013 and another from 2015, a time when this industry was much simpler and there was no such toxic political climate influencing it, and be like, hey, look, why were these games successful, huh? Why don't you bring up these games, huh? Like, what is this point supposed to do? All it's doing is proving my point, that this isn't an issue with chuds or bigots or sexists. This is a problem with the medium itself, fostering political activists instead of artists. The medium has changed. Things are not being played with the same rule set. It's no longer about entertainment. It's no longer about the artistry. It's about politics. It's about using the medium to indoctrinate, propagandize, or incite infighting with shit such as, it is what it is, the world has changed, don't like it, don't buy it. The quality of these pieces of media are in decline, and this is the root of the problem. When you see a game that has elements that you consider woke, but it's still good and successful, that means that it's either very tame with just a few inclusive elements that do not poison the rest of the product, or just straight up a normal movie or game or show that wasn't made with political bullshit in mind at all. It's not my fault that you see anything that isn't white, straight or male as woke, which is the majority of media. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, are we serious here? Look at all the games and movies and shows that have had prominent female and black characters over the decades. I know that woke Hollywood has the annoying habit of calling everything new, but most of the time it's total bullshit, like when Jennifer Lawrence said that The Hunger Games were the first action movies with female leads, forgetting action movies led by female actresses before she was even born. It is not my responsibility to deal with your delusions or biases, nor the delusions or biases from other people on other extremes, like for example Andy Pants. By that logic, nearly everything that has ever been made has been quote-unquote woke. Even Metal Gear Solid 3, which he featured as a masculine game in one of his videos, has been woke then, because Big Boss, before Naked Snake becomes the Big Boss, was a woman who kicked his ass. This is why I'm not interested in using this word very often. It's very inconsistent and it means different things to different people. I'm interested in tangibility here, in shit that actually matches reality. But by your own definition here, then yes, you are proving my point. Loads of supposed woke shit in your scale has worked in the past. Why? Because it wasn't made by unhinged political activists wanting to shove their narcissistic worldviews into every franchise, and instead it was made by actual artists with the sole intent to make a quality game, tell a great story, etc. The definition of the word woke may be up for interpretation, but the actual reason as to why this kind of DEI-driven content fails is not. Nor is the fact that DEI exists and unquestionably influences the content that is being produced. Jesus Christ, next question. Great, another brain dead take. I love it when people come into the video, completely ignore it, miss the entire point, and then at the end make the most ironic statement such as, not everything needs to pander exclusively to you, like mate, that is what I am saying. Hell, what I'm saying is just let's stop pandering. Period. Just make good games with no ideological agendas in mind, make interesting characters and design them accordingly without diversity quotas in mind and without any other kind of DEI bullshit, such as what's present in Microsoft's list of questions to consider, which they sent to their studios. They are making their games. The total opposite of this is, as a director, having a shit ton of identity politics speech in your developer diary section about Dragon Age as a series, and then making ugly ass characters, changing the art style to some cartoony, oversaturated Sims looking shit, and then making a character creator, calling it the most inclusive character creator, throwing in top surgery scars, non-binary as a gender, and they/them pronouns, and then keeping out the possibility of creating a proper male or proper female character with satisfying proportions that actually reflect reality. In other words, they are going to pander to a minority while purposefully going out of their way to exclude the vast majority of what men and women look like. This is a financially baffling decision.
My fellow Americans, I want to thank you for allowing me to be the first black woman president.
I don't think the previews have been overwhelmingly positive at all, unless you mean the previews themselves, like as in from the gaming journalists, which obviously this stuff is going to be very positive. I mean, they were glazing Concord and Dustborn's cheeks as well. And Star Wars Outlaws, remember how that game came out, so full of problems and bugs and etc.? The extent of it was never mentioned in any previews. I've been in Dragon Age communities on Facebook, Twitter and Reddit, and I do see quite a number of people still excited for it, but I don't see the majority of the discourse being positive, and I think that that's usually the best metric for it. It's when you find, for example, a random post from a random page or a YouTube trailer and you check the comments. Usually if that is overwhelmingly positive, then you've got something. But Veilguard has been very mixed from the start. The first cinematic trailer looked more like a hero shooter than anything else, the story trailer after it got much better reception, but then the gameplay showcase was mixed again, with concerns about the gameplay, the cartoony art style with overly saturated colors, overly smooth textures, the UI, the stubby character design, the overall vibe and dialogue. But of course there was also some positive feedback. The bigger problems came after the previews, first because of the character creator, then because of the BioWare developers who decided to insult the fans. I'll get around to this in a separate video soon. And then also because of this whole leak situation that just started getting talked about right now, where apparently a playtester revealed a bunch of concerning shit in an interview, such as even more DEI cringe like Tash, the Kunari character, introducing itself with overt 21st century Californian shit language from planet Earth by saying that they are non-binary. So yeah, I wouldn't say that it has been overwhelmingly positive, and from everything I've seen so far, I don't believe that this game is going to be very successful. But if it is, my opinion will be whatever my opinion will be when I get to play it. I was considering to buy it for content purposes since the channel has been growing nicely, but at the same time I was very turned away from doing it after reading those comments from BioWare. The truth is that they are extremely inflammatory and dismissive, and at the end of the day it's like I would rather grab my money, and if I want to buy a video game, just buy a video game that I actually want to play and support, or actually just use the money instead to like get a better microphone or get a second monitor, you know, stuff that I actually could make use of. With that said, as far as my personal part goes, if I like something, I will always admit that I like it, but I also am not delusional and fully understand that sometimes we can like things that are pretty bad. For example, I actually like Mass Effect Andromeda. I replay it every once in a while. I have done so at least 3 times since its launch in 2017. I can perfectly lay out all the reasons why I like it while still acknowledging all of the bad things about it that rightfully caused it to fail as an underwhelming follow-up to the original trilogy. When I like a game, I am not afraid of pointing out its flaws, and when I dislike a game, I have no qualms in giving it credit for the things that it did well. I think I made it pretty clear what my issue with it was. It's true that the Dragon Age as a series has always had its progressive elements, as mentioned in the previous reply, gay characters to romance and even a trans character in Inquisition. So far so good. But now you say that you think that it's a natural step to make it an option for the players themselves to create one. This is the problem with this mentality. It's that it never stops. It just keeps going and going and going and breaking apart what the actual piece of media is meant to be, because we're looking to the past and going, well, okay, if we did X amount of diversity and inclusion on the previous game or movie or whatever, now we need to multiply it. It's the next natural step. Why? Why is it the next natural step in this video game to increase these ideological injections rather than actually maintaining them, such as they maintained them back then as an optional addition, while maintaining their focus on the important parts of the game instead? Because let's not forget that, first of all, Veilguard isn't just including an option for the players themselves, it's excluding several options from other players as well. Again, as mentioned in the previous reply, we cannot create the men and women that the vast majority of players would find representative of either themselves or representative of what they want their protagonists to actually look like. The options are actually comically limited, so it's not really about inclusion, we're already at the stage of exclusion. And given the problem that these ideologies represent and fight towards these days, such as self-ID politics, children transitioning, etc., I would even say that we are not only at the exclusion stage, we are at the gates of radical political injections. And if this is always ever increasing, then what's the next natural step for Dragon Age after this? Hasn't it already pushed itself far beyond the point of diversity and inclusion and representation? What comes next? When will it stop? Will it actually be enough? And better yet, why? I actually outright refuse this premise because you can't give me a single acceptable excuse as to why there is a necessity to increase these things as a natural next step. Is this supposed to be a fantasy RPG? Or is this supposed to be a piece of LGBTQIA2S+ and DEI propaganda? The next natural step for any game in the series is to be better than the previous game. That's it. It's not to keep unendingly evolving its fucking DEI and pandering bullshit to higher and higher levels. We are at a point where we are injecting top surgery scars into a fantasy setting where surgeries aren't even a conventional thing, such as what we have. A fantasy setting that is night and day from our own reality, while at the same time depriving, aka excluding, people from creating any character that edges too close to looking actually feminine and curvy or actually masculine and brawny. Now, do you want to say that this is not ideological and it was actually just a coincidental, accidental fault of the art style and character design making everything look like a fucking garden gnome? I'm fine with that. I am okay with agreeing with disagreeing on this point and not pressing it, but the issue still remains that if that is the case, then the developers fucked up the character design and did not bother to work around it to add in different body types to provide other people with what they actually wanted to create, like not only just to represent themselves or just to represent the type of body types that they are used to creating in fantasy games such as these, but they sure as hell went out of their way to include a non-binary gender, they/them pronouns, and top surgery scars. So their priority to exclude the majority and pander to the ideological minority is still there. So, what is next after this? What's the next natural step? Closing the studio down and running for Congress, or joining Antifa, or rebranding BioWare into yet another unhinged DEI consulting company? It's either one or the other, because at some point you are no longer a game developer. You're just an activist trying to shove aggressive, self-absorbed junk into people's beloved franchises. And by the way, no, I am not reading too much into it. The "it's a fantasy world" excuse holds no power whatsoever. Fantasy worlds are not immune to rules that must be followed to conserve a setting suspension of disbelief. If nothing matters because it's a fantasy world, then what's the point of anything? Games, especially in the genre of fantasy like this, are meant to be escapism from our world. Such escapism is utterly compromised if you are overtly injecting politically charged modern-day Californian shit into it. In several videos of mine, I've already showed good examples of it and bad examples of it. For the interest of time, I'll just use this clip from a previous video. Let's get into an example. In Cyberpunk 2077, there is a trans character named Claire. First of all, she was written so well that you could play the entire game and not even know about it. Claire reveals to be trans in a passing dialogue where she mentions that her deceased husband was the only person that she was able to rely on during her transition. If she never brings it up again, and it is not at all what makes up her character's personality or her job or her objectives, the only thing that she has that points to it is a little trans flag sticker on the back of her truck. Which you could argue is a bit tacky because this would assume that in 2077 transsexuality hasn't yet been normalized to the point where trans people still need a flag for representation in a world where you literally install a fucking grenade into your face or replace 90% of your body with machinery and weapons. So I totally get the tackiness of the flag, but to me it's not a big deal. It's one of those things where I'm perfectly fine with compromising on. Because besides this, she is also very humanized as a character with flaws. In her personal questline, there is a morality question in her quest for revenge, where in the end, she ends up being wrong and you benefit far more if you talk sense into her rather than helping her fulfill her request. And this, I call a great example of an inclusion of a trans character because she's not being pandered to, she's not being made flawless, and real trans people don't want to shove the fact that they used to be a dude or a chick down your gullet. That's not in their list of priorities. Now let's look at an example where they did it the wrong way. Horizon Forbidden West features a trans character. They shoved the character off to a side quest up in a snow area. Here's a video of the scene.
To undergo our clan's most difficult trial on his own.
And you think he's crazy for trying?
I'm not a fan of that word. When I chose to wear a woman's armor, people called me crazy too.
This trans character is so incredibly out of place and so immersion breaking, it cannot even be compared to the Claire situation. Do you see the stark difference? This is like if the first time you walked into the Afterlife bar, where Claire is a bartender at, and you ordered a drink, so let's say that you ordered a Johnny Silverhand, and she went, "Oh yeah, back when I was a dude, I totally loved that drink as well." Like, what the fuck are you doing? Next. Well, if that was the case, then wouldn't it be much simpler, more intuitive, and even more inclusive to do like Elden Ring or Dragon's Dogma, where you have a sub-menu that lets you select multiple scars in several different layers? That way you would be able to do it with any other scar. Like, there's no other way around this. I'm not trying to make some point out of it, the developers are. I'm just pointing it out and exposing their lies about it being about inclusion, while excluding the majority of their players. And that's me being good faith, because if I wanted to be bad faith, I would look up a myriad of skin conditions, hair conditions, body deformations, diseases, etc. that are far more common than transsexuality, and I would be making it my point about how they say that it's about inclusion, but then, hey, look at all these other conditions that are more common than transsexual people, and they are not included in the character creator, blah 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 blah. But I'm not doing that. Like, I'm being extremely charitable in my take by simply pointing out their own self-made disingenuousness and contradictions. First of all, I never made a video on Baldur's Gate 3. I don't even consider it a woke game. At most, this is a game that contains some woke elements, such as the body type 1 and the body type 2 bullshit, but to me, a woke game is a game that has overt, immersion-breaking, socio-political or intersectional injections that do not serve the story, or the characters, or the world building, and instead actually do the opposite of that by ruining these elements of the game. To me, it's a game where the ideological injections are so inescapable that it affects my enjoyment of it. All in all, I don't like to use the word woke at all because everyone just fucking runs with it, right? So there are people out there that have wildly different definitions for the word. I like using it when I know that I am talking to someone who knows what I mean, right? So if I'm talking to a friend, for example, And I want to tell them that, for example, CD Projekt Red, right? So I want to tell them that CD Projekt Red, it has a website caked in DEI bullshit, is actively doing a program that only recruits women and excludes men, hired a former Sweet Baby Inc. writer as a new senior writer, and made a video on ESG where they retroactively apply DEI values to their previous games through absolute bullshit manipulative language that is trying to rewrite their very own history. Instead of reciting this entire fucking paragraph to them, I can just say CD Projekt Red is going woke and I am worried about their future games. Knowing that my friend knows what I mean in regards to these things, I am comfortable using that word. But when calling out problems within a game or a show or whatever, then I would much rather lay out exactly what it is that I mean when I say that there are problems with it and why I think that they are bad. There are many games, shows and movies out there that contain individual elements that one could consider woke, but that can still manage to be successful because of the overall experience not being compromised by these elements. Baldur's Gate 3 is a good example of this. This is a game that lets you get fully immersed in its world, and you don't have to contend with any gender ideology, socio-political matters or DEI bullshit once you are out of the character creator and the adventure actually begins. That is why it's successful, because it kept its quote-unquote wokeness in check. Want another example? Take House of the Dragon. People were concerned about it before the release of the first season. They thought it was going to be woke as fuck. Then it released and it was actually a good show, so those kinds of comments stopped, showing perfectly that when a product is good, then it's good, and people will engage with it enough to make it successful. This isn't about hate or bigotry or sexism, it's about quality, and when the focus of a showrunner or a game director is in the quality of their product, things usually work out. But when the focus is in ideological bullshit, then it absolutely correlates to the overall quality and success of the game. Like, what the fuck do you mean it doesn't? Are you living in an alternate timeline? You can't just yank Baldur's Gate 3 out of your ass like some kind of successful woke icon and ignore the fact that the vast majority of the game is just a normal fantasy RPG without any strong, overt woke elements. And you can't ignore all the constant failures of when these games and shows are made with such overt woke elements that completely break immersion and take it over, such as when they are made by unhinged activists like Ragnar Tornquist, who hates white people and is upset that his studio all the way up in Norway has too many white developers. And the kinds of developers he hires onto his studio, like this nutcase right here, who wants to put knitting men and sexy non-binary peeps into their games. Isn't it funny, by the way, how they use the word sexy? Meanwhile, if you try to use the word sexy to describe the kind of characters that you want in your games, they're going to call you an incel coomer.
Shit. Got your ass.
Ah man, I fucking love unhinged far leftist hypocrisy. These people trip all over themselves. But anyway, as I was saying, Dustborn is literally DEI the game. To call it woke is in and of itself a disservice. It feels like a euphemism. Like, this game is so terrible and so packed with this ideological garbage that it barely has an identity of its own. It is so incredibly out of touch that it doesn't even realize the irony in giving the protagonist the powers of the cancel culture and describing them with shit such as cancel and bully, etc., without noticing just how ridiculous that is. Without noticing the self-own, hell, worse than that, without noticing the maliciousness in its own behavior and presentation, while coming at it from a place of trying to make them look like the good guys. This game flopped so bad it made Concord look good. Wokeness is kind of a fucking spectrum at this point. Woke elements come in many forms and they're mostly, if not all, negative. For example, take girl bosses. Why do people hate girl bosses? It's not because they are girls, it's often because girl bosses are not compelling characters. In the intersectional asylum, female characters are not supposed to show weak qualities. So, for example, they're not meant to have fears, they're not meant to have weaknesses, they are not meant to be taught anything by anyone, they're not meant to be able to be be trained by anyone, especially not a male figure. They are meant to be amazing right from the beginning, and they are often portrayed very obnoxiously and superior. These are not character traits that people like. People don't get invested with this kind of shit. There is no development in it. This is a concept that doesn't work for male characters either, by the way. It's not sexism, it's just bad writing. But when it happens again and again and again, it becomes a fucking thing, and people identify this thing and they're going to call it woke because girl bosses are an element of wokeness. Should people be a little more chill and not immediately jump aboard the woke train as soon as they see something that could be perceived as a woke element? Like, for example, the Ghost of Yotai announcement trailer? Absolutely. I think that we should be a little bit more tempered and just take it easy. Let information come out first, analyze it, etc. before immediately jumping on and saying that it's woke. But whatever, it is what it is. Some people have more sensitivity to this stuff and some people have less. Take what you will from this topic or don't. One important thing to note though is that wokeness is absolutely correlated with failure. The more elements are put into a game or a movie or a fucking TV show, the more aggressive its injections are, the bigger the disaster. Especially when you are driven by political and ideological intent, or hire activists like Sweet Baby Inc. and Hit Detection. You do realize that if what you're implying is actually true, then you are supporting a company using LGBT people as bait for their video games promotion, right? Bait that they are purposefully setting on fire just to serve their own interests. You do realize how abhorrently vile that would be, correct? How not only are they setting their own community on fire, causing a divide within it because of all the people that play Dragon Age that do not agree with this shit, but are also causing an uproar from the outside who may blame the LGBT plus people for supporting, condoning, and potentially invading the entertainment space when in reality the individuals themselves have nothing to do with it?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
The rest of the stuff in this comment is stuff that I already addressed in the video. It's not for representation because it's not even representative of the average female proportions. It's not a gotcha in any kind of way, and if it was, it would be incredibly stupid. And I am not going to be buying that guilt-tripping bullshit about people being ashamed of themselves either. Nice try, but Dragon Age Veilguard's top surgery scars are not the reason why trans people are going to have the courage to get up in the morning, nor is it the reason that's going to make them discouraged from living their lives. In fact, it couldn't matter any less, and it's also totally irrelevant to the topic. People aren't against seeing these surgical scars. These surgical scars can even be related to something else entirely, like for example, breast cancer survivors. People are against the ideological influences and intentions behind the inclusion of these scars. And thank you so much for bringing up censorship, actually. I do remember games being censored for having blood and titties. They are actually still being censored right now. Veilguard doesn't have anything bigger than a B cup, if even that, and the asses are as flat as an ironing board. Game journalists are also making a whole song and dance about this game being the first fantasy RPG to not have spiders, because of all the people out there with arachnophobia, and any blood this game will have will be severely limited in impact thanks to how everything looks like a fucking episode of Teletubbies. You bring up the censorship of blood and titties without even realizing that it's your side trying to remove grittiness from games, visible in Dragon Age Veilguard, and boobs as well, visible also in Veilguard. So what's your point? Are you trying to make them for me? Thanks, I guess. The thing is that both of us can play this game, but I'm always going to be the one who's going to be coming out on top, because I don't have an affiliation. If I see censorship from the right, I will call out the right. If I see censorship from the left, I will call out the left. This type of stuff can come from both sides of the aisle. However, right now, it's mostly the fucking left. Probably because right now they are the ones that are holding most of the power and influence in corporate and entertainment spaces. They're the ones responsible for defeminizing characters, censoring things that they deem problematic, applying DEI filters to everything, which gives them the visible opportunities to make characters like K-Vess because of in-office ideologies that deem beauty as something suspicious and evil that is only appealing to the male gaze. For more on this, feel free to check out my video on the topic. Yeah, that's true. These things are put in and people always come out of the gate with comments like, who cares, why does it matter that much to you? But as soon as you try to mod it out, they fucking implode. They lose their minds, as if you're not just participating in an option that supposedly doesn't matter, but are instead doing something vile, like a crime against humanity. And this is why even the option itself eventually becomes a bad thing, because you're giving people the option to deny their ideology, and this is also why everything gets judged off of a pre-established standard going forward, meaning if Veilguard added dedicated top surgery scar buttons, then every game going forward with a character creator is going to be judged if they don't do that. It'll be seen as a potential attack on that ideology since a standard has already been set. It's the same with this body type bullshit. On the surface level, I could give a fuck, right? I mean, it's just a little button, it doesn't really matter. And it's pretty obvious too. Body type 1 or body type A is a man and body type 2 and body type B is a woman. But look at how it has spread to so many more games ever since then. Even games from the East are doing it. Like even Elden Ring itself did this. And it's like I said, at a surface level, it's just such a tiny little thing. It's like, fuck it, who cares? Let me just get through these menus and start the game already. But under the surface, it's an ideological push to erase terms such as male and female for the supposed sake of inclusivity, even though fucking 99% of the people in the goddamn world happily identify themselves with the fact that they are men and women. Fuck me, even trans people want to be identified as men and women depending on what they transition to. The people wanting the word male and female erased from this shit are a fucking minority within a minority within another minority. I don't even know if they are able to reach 1% of the population. And yet, here we are. It's in pretty much every new character creator that we got because it became a standard by which to judge upcoming games. And judge them very harshly, right? This isn't like, oh, they didn't do this? Well, they should have. No, it's like, hey, what the fuck? Why didn't you add this? What are you? Are you against inclusion? Are you against trans people? Are you against non-binary people? Are you alt-right? Oh my god, you are alt-right. Hey guys, check it out. This company is alt-right. This video game is attracting a toxic fanbase, guys, check it out. So yeah, I mean, this kind of thing just keeps going, and eventually it ends up in people not even having an option, not even having a choice. Places like Nexus mods don't even let you host these kinds of mods. They classify them as hate. They delete them. They tell users to fuck off. Like this example here, defending that they wouldn't allow any mods that went against diversity and inclusion. Yet, mods like these of making Geralt black in The Witcher are allowed. But mods like these making Angrboda reflect her actual mythological heritage in a game that blackwashed her, aka God of War Ragnarok, are not allowed. It's a total disconnect from reality and a double standard. I also covered this topic in another video as well, by the way. If anyone is interested, here it is. So in conclusion, you know, at the surface it's like just a button. Body type A, body type B, who cares, let's just move on. But under the surface, it goes further and further down deep into ideological shit that does actually touch on societal issues. For example, some schools are starting to teach kids identity politics with these awful books that have dozens of different genders, neither of which even include the word male and female, unless it's preempted with the word cisgender before it. Then they ask, who cares? Why does it matter? Oh my god, what is the big deal? Well, the reasons are all there. It's just that people are awfully fucking uninformed when it comes to how deep this DEI bullshit really goes. But anyway, I'm going to cut this video here. It has gone on way too long already. I may consider doing this kind of thing again for other videos in the future if I find comments that are worth replying to in longer terms that require a video rather than a text reply. But do let me know in the comments what you thought of this. It was much more like chilled out for me, just answering comments rather than scripting something more serious for a topic, and I don't know if this is something that you guys would actually like to see more of in the future or not at all. Stay tuned for this weekend. I'm going to try to get another video up going over David Gaider's, former BioWare developer, mental breakdown on social media in regards to criticism launched at Veilguard and the hypocrisy of his comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe if you enjoy what I do here, and yeah, that's about it. Have a good day and I'll see you on the next one.